of the aesthetic and intellectualize it, universalize it. That's very important. They try to tell us there's a universal aesthetic. Okay, why do they do that? Why would the Europeans have a need to do that? One of the things you have to answer for yourselves is, why is universalism a method that they use in their argumentation? Okay, one thing it does is to hide their political intent, hide their nationalism. So that we define aesthetic, then we talk about rationalism in the aesthetic, which we've already done before, so we pick up that theme again. And then we have sections where we're comparing their aesthetic with those of other people. We compare it with those of African people. We have writers like Kofi Awonor, who is an Ewe poet, Carlton Maletti, who talks about ritual drama, and various African authors like that. Then a section, White, Good, and Beautiful, which is very obvious how they use their aesthetic. And that you should, by the way, relate to, that's on page 219. Page 219, relate that to chapter 4, the next chapter, which is their self-image. You see? White, Good, and Beautiful. Relate that to chapter 4. All right? Then page 222 is the myth of a universal aesthetic. And hey, any artist, any African artist, I see Aziza, my sister back there, I wanted to know how many artists I have here. They can tell you what that was all about, what that is all about. Talking about these universal standards of art, and how what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to be creating art that can, can be universal. What does that do? That takes you away from your cultural center, and it makes it seem that it's inferior for you to be an African artist and to be working from an African center. When what they're doing is, of course, creating from a European center. That's what everybody does. But they can impose it on us, strangle our artists, if they say what they're doing is really universal. And they tried to do that for a while. I think that I don't think that we're really going for that anymore, are we? No. Okay. Some of the discussion in the 60s was a lot about that. The book by Addison Gale, edited The Black Aesthetic, was about that issue of universalism. But then there's a discussion of music in here as well, the differences and what they have to do to control music, the whole thing of notation, and how that gave them a sense of control, how it also, you control through standardization. You see, and improvisation gives them a lot of problems because you can't control that, you see. But that's two different ways of relating to reality, also two different purposes. Theirs is about power, power over others, and about control, you see. And then finally, the connecting thread, aesthetic Utamawazo and Utamaroho. By the way, my sister Aziza, sitting over there, is quoted in this text. And was very helpful to me, particularly in this chapter. But this talks about icons. It talks about the power of icons. It talks about how they impact on our brain cells, on our bodies, on us, and how they affect consciousness. So that's how we end chapter 3. Are there any questions? So I have an after-school program. The age is from 12 to about 17. We deal with the concept of asili. They use the concept. They can read a newspaper and say, there's the European asili functioning. I mean, they stuff that I can't do. And that's what'll happen is they'll give it back to you in a whole new way. It's really good because what you're doing is you're freeing them. you know, as opposed to the limitations that happen in terms of the academic setting. We can't associate academia with truth. And that's what we do. We think that that's the intelligent place. But it isn't. It's a particular limited definition of truth. I've been working with these young people. We've had our after-school program for 12 years. And what happens is they will come back to you with these kinds of critiques, these kinds of responses. And you've got to be honest in the way that you then respond to them. At the same time, you can't allow them to use these new eyes that they have to, as a cop-out from their responsibilities. So that what you'll get is some statements like, oh, well, I don't need school because they don't know what they're doing anyway, that kind of thing. But what happens is that the school environment becomes a place that challenges them to go inside themselves, challenges them to develop self-discipline so that they can indeed then critique this thing in a way